song is for Feel the Wave On. This spell is for Freddie Gray. This spell is for Freddie Gray. This spell is for Eric Gardner. This spell is for Harry Gardner. This spell is for Ahmed Aubrey. This spell is for Ahmed Aubrey. This spell is for Fernando Castillo. This spell is for Fernando Castillo. This spell is for Michael Brown. This spell is for Michael Brown. This spell is for Tamar Ryan. This spell is for Tamar Ryan. This spell is for Vincent Ramos. This spell is for Vincent Ramos. This spell is for Melissa Ventura. This spell is for Melissa Ventura. Trayvon Martin and all the others. This spell is for all the others.
No force more powerful than our people. As we rise to greatness, to some we're lethal. Melanin of blacks, browns, yellows, and reds. Beautiful hair, kinky, curly, straight, and dreads. Been tricked, robbed, and fed so many lies. It's time to unite, not compromise. Our families destroyed by death, despair, and hate. We're strong, we got faith, it's not too late. We will expose the ugly, corrupt system aimed at our colors, race, and religion. We're fed up if you didn't detect it. We're fully woke and will be respected. The revolution was televised. Now the whole world knows. No more hiding the truth behind closed doors. Be sure you hear us. No need to fear us. Just know when we say every single day, Black Lives Matter.
Black lives truly matter. Black lives truly matter.
I didn't shoot the sheriff, but the sheriff shot at me. I didn't shoot the deputy, as the world watched they could see. Systematic racism, I don't care if you wear blue. I said systematic racism, soon you will be through. You keep killing all my brothers and sisters, just don't get no rest. You chase them down and shoot them up, keep taking away our best. No hiding from the videos, and now the world can see what's been happening to my brothers. Justice is what we need.
Black lives truly matter. Black lives truly matter.
I didn't shoot the deputy, but the deputy shot at me. I said systematic racism.
All right, are we ready to get moving on?
The problem, and the whole wide world now knows.
Thank you to Chili Willie Groove for this song. You know, he's a Grammy Award winning artist, and he was here last summer for the Arts and Ideas Festival, and so he sent this song to me to play for Black History Month. And I'm so grateful because it's such a great song. It's got a little bit of something, something, something and everything in it. Good morning. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. That's Harry Drills. Welcome to LoveBabz, Love Talk. This morning, I'm starting out with early guest at 9:15. Jacob Prodon, the artistic director for Long Wharf Theater, and Nancy Alexander, who is chair of Long Wharf Theater's board. And for transparency purposes, I serve on the Long Wharf board, and I am its secretary. So I just wanted to put that out there so that
full disclosure.
Full disclosure, Harry.
Yeah, just in case you say something nice about them.
Because I know how the haters come, Harry. Well, of course she's gonna say nice things because she's on the board. Well, if you know me, I'll say nice things. Whether or not I say nice things won't be because I'm on the board, it's because it's true. And I could say equally not nice things if it were true as well. So, you know how I get down, Harry. So, but the Long Wharf Theater announced that it is becoming an itinerant theater. They're gonna take the show on the road, and so a couple of concerns have come up for people. I've been paying attention to the chats all over the place and the comments. The New Haven Independent, of course, the arts paper. I've been listening and paying attention. People have sent me messages directly. People have spoke to me directly on Facebook on my social media page. So you know what? It's good to have the folks in the room, and we unpack this Long Wharf Theater move. And Harry, theaters all across this country are trying to figure out how to do theater, how to reimagine theater. They know how to do theater, how to reimagine theater, as we are reimagining housing and education and employment. A lot of imagination going on.
Well, COVID forced the acceleration of these new ideas, because then it's new, but a lot of people were procrastinating moving in certain directions, but COVID kind of forced the issue with a lot of people. But I like it's just your audience is wider, your reach is longer. So I like mobile and stuff like that. It's better. It's just
I like it too, Harry. This is the concept that Brian Slater and I have with Jazzware, bringing jazz to spaces that ordinarily people would not consider a place for jazz. And we were successful for that whole year of nice crowds of people before the pandemic. Now the pandemic shut us all the way down, but we're about to amp back up again. We're looking to amp up again and start Jazzware. And it really gave people opportunity to experience jazz in cool spaces with cool people. So I would imagine. So I like this concept myself. But there's some people got concerns about a couple of things. So we're going to address them. Hey, Nancy Alexander. Good morning.
Hello, Babz.
How are you?
All right. How are you?
Listen, I'm up doing my thing on a snowy day.
It is that.
Harry, we don't have no theme music. What is going on? We world class.
I could put theme, but
That's all right. No, we already in the conversation now.
Yeah.
So how's it going, Nancy Alexander?
Well, it's pretty hectic. There's a lot going on at Long Wharf Theater.
Is it hectic?
It is. It's a lot to take in.
You know what? But here's the thing: what I know, Nancy, we are built to take in the hard things and the easy things and the complicated things and the fun things. Like we have the capacity for it. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning.
Hi, Jacob.
I feel like in that lovely kitchen of yours, you ought to be cooking up something for us.
Yeah, what's on the menu today, Jacob?
Nothing right now. Are we on? Are we live?
We are live. We are
Oh,
live.
wow.
I know. Listen,
Amazing.
we jump right in, baby. We jump right in. So
Okay.
good morning. So let me say good morning to everybody once again. Jacob Perdone, Artistic Director, Long Wharf Theater, and Nancy Alexander, who is the board chair of the Long Wharf Theater. And y'all know, because y'all have been messaging me and wearing me out about the Long Wharf Theater move, becoming itinerant. And so they're here, and we're going to talk about it. So y'all made the announcement. We made the announcement. Let me say we, because I'm on the board too, for full disclosure, which I already told people. We made the decision.
Babz, I love that you were on the board. You are just so special, and you have such a voice that is so important. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go with that. My kids would not agree with you, but I'm gonna go with that. So we made the move to go itinerant. So Jacob, talk to me about, what does that mean?
So itinerant means to not be anchored by one space. The model allows us to essentially be, to kind of to tailor make sort of each project, as we see fit. So, rather than saying to an artist or to a project, this is your venue, this is your space, we can now say to an artist, okay, what's the container that we need to build for this specific project? So let's find the right venue to tell this story, or let's find the right community partner to tell this story or to build this project. So the model of being itinerant is not a new model. There are many companies, specifically in New York, off Broadway, who have office space, but when it comes time to actually produce their shows, they find the right venue. They find the right theater venue to produce their work. So that's the idea here. The idea is, to be a theater company that's really rooted in the community, to be a theater company that truly belongs to everyone, and that belongs to the people of New Haven and the surrounding area. It's about access. And so rather than folks coming to us, we will come to you, and we will make and build and create with you. Across the city in different venues. That's what itinerant means.
Okay, so Nancy, some of the word on the street is, well, maybe Long Wharf Theater doesn't want to pay that rent. Is that rent cost prohibitive? Is it the driving force behind this move? Like, what are some of the driving forces around making this decision?
Yeah. So the rent was not a driving factor. The big picture financially, if I start there, is that regional theater in general and Long Wharf specifically have had a business model or a budget, trying to balance a budget, had not been working for years. We were ending each year for many, many years with a deficit. And in traditional culture, those could be covered, those year-end deficits could be covered by people with really deep pockets. And people are not doing that anymore. Philanthropy isn't working that way anymore. So in recent years, we really were more dependent on bank loans and taking money out of our endowment, which long-term is just not a sustainable practice. So it was the overall financial picture that was part of this. And the date of the lease ending was a catalyst for really needing to have this conversation. What could be a different business model that could work for us and that would fulfill this vision of theater being truly for everyone? Because there were things, much as I love that theater space at Long Wharf, there were things about it that were exclusive, that people couldn't get to it from everywhere, that it felt like a barrier to a lot of people, and it made theater not be for everyone.
And honestly, that site was chosen so it would be accessible to suburban communities. It was not to be accessible to New Haven. And I don't say that to say I don't want people to think that I'm saying something that's not true, that New Haven itself was not a factor really in the location of that theater. Like it just happened to be in New Haven, but it really wasn't about New Haven. That's my take on it. Does that feel kind of true?
I don't know because I wasn't there. Um, I certainly see and agree that it was chosen because it was accessible by car to people from all around the region.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also do know that it wasn't envisioned originally to be a permanent home, and yet it became a permanent home, has been for 57 years. But honoring the innovative spirit of the founders, let's innovate.
So Jacob, you are in conversation with artistic directors across the country and other artistic venues and folks who are doing this work. And everyone is having this conversation about how we reimagine theater. How are
Yeah.
they reimagining theater? I mean, even Broadway is having this conversation about reimagining, getting audiences back, because the pandemic has been a catalyst for folks to reimagine how theater is presented. So, talk a little bit about what you're hearing across the country, that you could feel the effects in New Haven. You could feel the effects at Long Wharf.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that the main sort of struggle or challenge or invitation, I like to frame it as a positive. The invitation is to think about how we engage our communities and how we engage audiences. I think that's the thing that I think the COVID-19 and the demands for racial justice, I think, really cracked open. I think not just for theaters, Babz, but I think for arts and culture up in this country, museums, dance, opera, you name it. I think that the demand to truly be a place where our communities are centered and the engagement is one that's really authentic. I think that's the thing that I think all of us are wrestling with. One of the things that I continue to reflect on is a virtual event that we did in October of 2020. We did an artistic congress. It was trying to engage our communities virtually. And given that it was an election year, we thought, wow, if there was ever a time for theater to have a voice and to bring artists and thinkers and scholars together to talk about what's the role that art and activism can have, what's the role that theater can have in this historic moment. And one of the artists that we brought into that conversation was a poet and a playwright. His name is Luis Alfaro. And he says this great thing, which was in our press release, which is that the great pause has become the great possibility. That this time of pause is truly an invitation for us to really reimagine, right? That for arts and culture in this country, we say that we want to be beacons of light. We say that we want to be boundary breaking. We say that we want to be a place to celebrate difference. But in order for that to happen, we have to be real architects of that. And we have to be willing to stretch our imagination and to make bold choices. And so I think that continues, I think, to sit at the center of the conversation, I think, for so many of us. And some organizations are meeting that invitation differently. So this is how Long Wharf Theater is, I think, meeting that moment. And just to go back to what Nancy was sharing about our founders, I spoke to John Jory, who co-founded Long Wharf Theater, when we were talking about making this historic move. And one of the things that became clear in that conversation is that the spirit of imagination, of dedication, of tenacity, those things really sat, I think, at the center of Long Wharf's founding. And so that same, I think that the ethos around that, I think, also sit at this evolution. It almost feels like kind of a full circle moment. And that was what John reflected back to me when we were talking. Because I think there were folks that said, are you crazy? A regional theater? Because this was in 1965, when there weren't a lot of professional theaters. But it was that the spirit of possibility, of imagination, of dedication. And so we are building on that history. We are building on that history of innovation. We are building on that historic support. The thing that I love about the theater, the reason why I became a theater producer and have now been doing this work for 20 years, is that the theater, unlike some of the other artistic pathways, is that it's truly a space to hold all of us. So for those folks who have been coming to Long Wharf Theater for many, many years, right? Those subscribers who we love, who've been coming for 20, 30, 40 years, Long Wharf Theater can still be your artistic home. Long Wharf Theater can still be a place where you see world-class theater. And we will make pathways to those who haven't been coming, who haven't always felt welcome. And the tent that we are building is just going to be bigger now. So I think that's also part of the conversation of, let's not go back. One of the things that Louis says, he says, the great pause has become the great possibility. And then he goes on to say, please, let's not go back to the way things were. Change is hard, but this moment requires that we change.
I like that. I mean, I feel that way. I'm with you. I mean, I'm with you. Talk to me about this itinerant model that means we can make theater anywhere and everywhere. But there are some technical and logistical things that that need to be considered. And some of the messages that I got were, well, where are the props going to go? And Long Wharf Theater is known for its wonderful production value, right? Like when people have spoke to me, they can cite to me every piece of fabric and stage thing that they saw and was moved by. And they were like, well, what's going to happen? Like, will we have that again? Will we lose that kind of production value?
With Kit and I, so Kit Ingwe, my partner in crime in all of this, who is our managing director, an extraordinary leader, who I'm really walking in partnership with on this. We actually were just talking about this yesterday, that we really believe that just because we won't be anchored by one venue and that we will find different spaces to share our stories, I think we will have to do some reimagining, but it doesn't mean that the quality of our shows, that production values have to, the production values may shift, but we're still going to produce high quality theater. It's going to take us some time. And fortunately, we are, as a part of our plan, we are building a runway that will give us that time to think about, to your point, to think about where the props go, to think about costumes, to think about set. I mean, it is true that when you have one venue, you have infrastructure. So one of the things that we do have to really think about, and we're being really discerning about this, is how do we still build those structures even within an itinerant model? So as I said, we are known for producing great theater, and we will continue to do that in this model. Yeah.
So Nancy Alexander, how do you talk to the community about this? How do we frame this so that we are educating and sharing with the community about what this means to them?
Yeah, so from time to time, I hear something like, I come to the theater to be entertained, not educated. I don't like where the theater is headed. And I think I hear this from people who have actually not been seeing our productions. And what we've done so far this year has been stunningly beautiful and superbly acted. And for me, coming out at the end of each of these productions, they haven't left me in the same place. Theater is powerful. And whether the people on stage look like us or not, and for many, many decades, they've mostly looked like me, the themes are universal. And there was a study recently that I talked about in a blog that I wrote for Long Wharf, which showed a bunch of audience members some performances that included people who weren't like them. And then they learned what the experience was like, and they found two effects from that theater experience. One was that people actually shifted their mindsets about the people that they were seeing on stage, and the groups that they were seeing represented on stage. And the other thing was, even more generally, that when folks had finished seeing those performances, they were inclined generally to be more charitable, to be more philanthropic. Something happened to people just in the experience of theater that didn't show them people who were exactly like them. And that's what I really hope to convey to our longtime subscribers who tend to be pretty homogeneous, that just because we're seeing people who don't look like us, it doesn't mean that this theater experience is not going to be deeply, deeply moving and meaningful and beautiful.
Mm. So Jacob, seeing theater, making theater for everyone and including everyone doesn't necessarily mean My Fair Lady with an all-black cast or My Fair Lady with a Latino cast. Like, talk to me about centering other voices that maybe that will do just what Nancy says: entertain, educate, and have people walk away with a different sort of change their mind or shift their thinking about what they just saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I love, one of the other reasons I love the theater is because it does help us understand the world around us. It helps us to understand and to celebrate difference. Uh, uh, One of the things that one of my mentors, Oscar Eustis, talks about, who runs the public theater in New York City, is he said, if theater is doing its job, you go into the theater as strangers, but you walk out as a community because you've had that collective experience. And I think that feels really also sort of at the center of what we're trying to do, I think, in many ways. And so, yes, when I think about the kinds of stories, the kinds of, the kind of programming that I hope to produce at Long Wharf Theater, the word that sort of feels central to that, that I use a lot, is kaleidoscope. We want to reflect the kaleidoscope of our city and the surrounding area on stage, and let different stories be in conversation with each other. One of the questions, Babz, one of the questions that I get sometimes, which it's an interesting question, but folks have just been very, very blunt and said, so you're Latino, you're a queer man. So does that mean that we're now going to just see just all Latino plays? Does that mean we're just going to see plays about the gay experience or by gay writers? I say, so those experiences are important to me, but it's also about intersectionality, right? I am not just one thing. No person, including white folks, are just one thing. And so I think that's also what the theater can do. There can be a kaleidoscope, different kinds of stories that intersect with each other, that are in conversation with each other. I mean, yes, I'm Latino, but I also like Shakespeare. I like classic plays. I like Tennessee Williams, right? So that's also been a part of the history of Long Wharf theaters, and it will continue to be. So I see a world in which, we have that dynamic new play written by perhaps a person of color. And then we have that classic play that maybe is told in a different kind of way. And then we have that musical, and so like that's what it's about. It's about an exchange of ideas, exchange of experiences, and for us to reveal in our collective humanity through those experiences.
I think one of my favorite things I saw was Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
I still think about this, and I'm on Instagram friends with the Mr. Darcy character. And I love this play so much. Like, I just thought it was diverse, but the energy and you had like a few characters that did a lot of different characters. And I'd never seen anything quite like that before. And I just loved it. And there was a couple of little Black girls in the audience who, when they grow up and they read this story again in college or high school, that for them, their first Mr. Darcy will always be this tall Black man. And I just love that. And there's nowhere else you could get that experience except in the theater. In the theater. So have you heard from actors and people who do artistic expression about what this could mean? Because part of the charm and the greatness of the Long Wharf Theater is its ability to have world-class talent grace those stages. Have you heard from people who have, shown up and showed out on that stage? And what do they think about this? Have you heard from those people?
Well, I have. I mean, so one of the, we have an artistic ensemble. When I became artistic director, I thought it was important to bring together a group of artists, both local and not local, to support the work artistically. To be thought partners, to also incubate their own projects at Long Wharf. That Long Wharf could be an artistic home, and so. They were some of the first that I had reached out to. And I have to say, Babz, collectively, such excitement, just trailblazing, pioneering. This is exactly what the future is. I hope more theaters follow suit. It was uniformly positive and excited. And I think for some of those artists who are actively creating projects for Long Wharf Theater, it's really expanded their imagination, because again, they get to think about the container with which we build their project in I think in a different way. So for the artists, I think there's just been real excitement, and I think that we will continue to attract, I think, world-class artists, because what we also know is that a great theater company is built by relationships and by community. One of the things I share with my students at Yale, so I teach at Yale, I teach a producing course, and I really believe that great art comes out of great relationships. And I think that's the thing that we will preserve that. And I think so long as we do that, have great relationships in the field, we will still be able to, I think we'll still be able to bring great talent. And also, let's celebrate our talent that's right here in our city. That's also part of this model, is that there's extraordinary talent right here in New Haven. And I think that we have to build pathways to that community as well.
So, Nancy, will the Long Wharf Theater forever stay itinerant, or is it itinerant for the moment, for a few years? I mean, is there a search for a home? Is that part of the conversation?
I personally can envision a time when we do have an anchor space, and that's more accessible to all of the region and all of our community in New Haven. We don't know at the moment where that could be. I think some possibilities are opening up that we don't even know about yet. And we are going to spend some time being intentional about exploring and popping up in different places. But yeah, I would personally, I would love to see us have a space that is identified as our central home, and possibly then some satellites and partners all around. But that's a work in progress.
Okay. So I want to spend a few seconds on what do you say to the critics? What do you say to the people who are like, this is the end of theater as I know it. I hate this. When Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman were around, this was not the theater that they imagined, and it sounds like y'all are not being truthful about why y'all are doing this. And what do you say to the critics?
Well, first of all, come see our productions. Please do not throw stones if you have not seen what's happening at Long Wharf lately, because it's really representative of the quality that we intend to continue having going forward. Jacob, you want to continue?
Gosh, I guess the thing that I'm reflecting on, Babz, is one of the. So at Long Wharf Theater, the staff and I, along with Kit, all of us together, we created group agreements for how we want to be in relationship to each other. And sometimes I think we really hold up those group agreements, and sometimes maybe not as well. And one of those group agreements is yes and. The idea behind that is that we can hold multiple things. There can be multiple truths. So that's the thing that as you can imagine, I also have been getting lots of phone calls, text messages, emails, and as I said, for the most part, folks are supportive, but there have also been, and there have also been some real challenges. And so I'm holding both things. Yes, and I am holding the excitement that folks have, the belief that theater can be for everyone, the belief that this new model presents possibilities that we can't even imagine, that this new model is about discovery and imagination. And I'm holding the grief. I too, to Nancy's point, there are things that I do love. And I'm holding grief around what this means for those who will be impacted by this change. I'm holding the challenge of what it means to thoughtfully transition an audience into a new way of thinking about Long Wharf theater. I am holding, the challenge, although I believe it's true, the challenge of what it means to build on the legacy and the history of Long Wharf theater, the history of innovation. So it's not an and or, it's an and. Yes, and I can hold multiple things. Both things can be true. And I think that as we move into this new model, and as we move into this transition, I think our job, actually, not our job is to be able to hold space that can hold all of those tensions. Because I understand that folks say, gosh, that's been my home for 50 plus years. And so what I want to say to that person who's angry and frustrated and doesn't get it, I hear you. And I hope you'll come on the journey with us. I hear you, and give us a shot. I hear you, and to build a theater company, a boundary-breaking new American theater that belongs to everyone, we need everyone to be a part of writing that story. Come on the journey with us. It's going to be windy. There are going to be challenges, but it also can be, I think, some of the most joyful work that we do, right? The work of building a truly inclusive theater company that belongs to everyone can be some of the most joyful work that I think we do. And I think that's the invitation. And I hope that folks will join us, because we're actively writing that story together. This is not about the end of Long Wharf. This is about ushering in a new chapter for Long Wharf that builds on all that's come before for the next generation.
Talk to me a little bit about the folks who actually work at Long Wharf. Such creative, talented artisans, from the folks that make the costumes to the folks that build the sets, the lights, the this, the that, and the other. All the people, award-winning people who have spent a great deal of time making Long Wharf Theater look incredible in its productions. What happens to them? What do you say to them? How do we hold them centered so they don't feel, we can't help how people feel, but what happens? What's the conversation, or what's the process for them? It's a lot.
Yeah.
I like what you said in the board meeting about we will be intentional. We will hold them as in ways that we can hold them, or something to that effect. But talk to what because I know they're listening, and I know people are listening, and people are concerned. And talk to me about what happens to them.
There's a real tenderness around this subject, because they have been at the heart of Long Wharf, and the structure will change, and we don't yet know exactly how it's going to change. Specifics still working out.
And I appreciate the honesty in that. Like, I appreciate you saying that rather than, flowers and perfume, right? Like that you say, you know what, we're working this out and we're moving through. And I think that's an honest, legitimate, authentic answer.
Well, and I think to add to that, I think that, and it's also about part of our commitment, I think, to being, to having a thoughtful culture. Again, sometimes we get it right, and sometimes there are days where we really can do better. But I think how you offboard, I think, a staff member in a humane and thoughtful culture is making sure that they really are cared for. That it's not like, okay, thank you for your service, and then that's it. I mean, I think that we will be very discerning, and really thoughtful about if we do have to, when we have to make those changes, and if we have to make those changes, to make sure that it is done with real care, and making sure that people also have the resources that they need to transition. So that is also, that will be a part of the work and a part of our planning.
And there's the seed of an idea germinating in my mind about this, which is, as we think about new American theater, that it turns out Long Wharf is sort of in the vanguard of in this work, in this conversation. Can we think about how the work for theater workers can be structured? Even as the structure of theater changes, can the work be structured? Can we help them work in so that their careers are sustainable too? Like, not just dropping people, but how can we help think about how work is done in theater so that it makes it continues to be possible for people to have a full livelihood in theater? I don't think we've scratched the surface of that yet, but I think it's possible.
So it sounds like not only are we taking a fresh journey, but the journey is wide and vast because there's a lot of levels to this thing.
Yeah.
Just what you said, Nancy, about sustainability in the arts. People having full on careers, and Jacob, you talking about expanding and inviting various communities in to share in this journey. So tell me, what is it? What is your ultimate dream for this? What is the ultimate, like, what is the biggest possible dream? If you could get all the barriers out of your way and and all the things, like if you could have everything you wanted in this process, what is the biggest dream?
Well, before I answer that, I actually want to go back to something around, the changes and how we're thinking about our staff and our communities and our audiences. One of the ways that we are intentionally trying to walk through this differently is that it's not a fait accompli. That in fact there are a lot of decisions that we have not made. There are a lot of discoveries that we actually want to make together. That I think that one of the ways that we would have been upholding those structures that are rooted in racism and are really problematic is to say, all right, y'all, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. But that's actually not what we're doing. And that was intentional, right? That was intentional. We're saying to leave the terminal. And now we enter the phase of discovery. And now we build together. We figure it out. We figure out, okay, what are the venues? All right, how do we do this? How do we do this together? Again, I think it's about how can we be architects together? So I think that's just another way that we're trying to, to be thoughtful. And again, sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we might get it wrong. And it goes back to that value of yes and. I can hold, both things can be true. I was thinking about something Carmen Morgan has said to us. Carmen is the executive director of Art Equity, which is an organization that Long Wharf has been working with, and who I know from my days at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival when I was a producer out there. And she said, when you do this work, you are always living into your values. You are living into the culture that you're trying to build for your company. You'll never arrive. You're always building. And again, some days you're going to get it right, and some days you're going to get it wrong. And that's part of the journey. The other thing that she says is, do you want to be right, or do you want to be in community? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be in community? And so I think we can, so that, again, that's also part of the invitation, part of the work that we get to do together. Sometimes we're going to mess up. And it's that thing that Carmen says, right? Do you want to be right or do you want to be in community? And it's a process, it's a journey. So that's the other piece of this. So there are times we're gonna mess up, and there are gonna be times where I think we do okay. And
I appreciate you I appreciate you standing in that space. I think because people think that these decisions that we just know the path. Like we know what the end game is. No, we don't. And we'll get it right and we'll get it wrong. And I think that's life, right? Like that's how we move through life. We have a plan sometimes, but sometimes, plans go a little different. And then all the things that sort of you pick up on your journey that help you, or set you back a little bit, but it's all driving you forward. So tell me about the biggest dream. Tell me about if all the barriers didn't exist, and what do you when you go to bed at night, Jacob, you're like, man, if I had all the things that I wanted for this, this is what it would look like. Or do you allow for that kind of dreaming? Do you allow for that kind of dreaming?
Sure. I mean, I think that's I think one of the great joys is to carve out space where you can really, activate your imagination and think about the BHAG, as they say in business school, the big, hairy, audacious goal. It's not dissimilar from Nancy. Long Wharf Theater, we could have done let's go from this space to this space. That model exists, right? I think there are there are a number of theater companies that decide to move, and they enter a period of being itinerant, and they launch that capital campaign and they move into their new space. I think of Arena Stage in DC. I think of the Alliance down in Atlanta. I think of the Guthrie in Minneapolis, right? That they left their home and they moved into a different home. And we're gonna do it a little bit differently. We're going to leave our home. We're going to actually go and be in the community, build with the community, create with the community, and allow the community to really inform, ideally, hopefully, inform how we want to show up for our next iteration, for our next space. So at the end of this process, because I actually don't think that it'll be indefinite, I think that it'll be for a period of time. And then at the end of that process, we will have a home. And I think in my ideal world, that home would be closer to downtown. It would be accessible to those who have been coming to Long Wharf Theater, and it would be accessible to those who haven't been coming to Long Wharf Theater. And that it's a beautiful 250-seat theater that allows us to continue to do world-class theater, that it can be a flexible space. So that way, if it's a new play or a classic or a musical, that there is a cafe for people to come and for there to be those collisions where people can exchange ideas and share stories, that there's an education center dedicated to our youth, a space for our youth to be able to, to talk about their work and to build and to create. So it's a campus. It's a campus where all those ideas and our entire community, being in community, can all be together. That is my hope for Long Wharf. And I think that's where we're heading.
I like it. I like it very much. I so appreciate y'all coming on and talk about this, because I know you have lots of these conversations coming up and lots of places where you're going to be having these conversations and making the rounds about what this means to existing theater goers and theater goers to be attracted. So I thank y'all very much, Jacob and Nancy.
Thank you, Babz. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being such a light for Long Wharf and for this community. It really means the world to us.
Well, you are kind to say so. So thank y'all, and we will definitely stay in touch. And y'all will come back on throughout the journey and keep updating us and taking us along for this ride. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the snow day.
Bye, Babz. Bye,
All
Jen.
right. y'all later.
Bye.
All
See
right,
ya.
Harry, we're going to play a little music, have a little bit of break, and then we'll come back on the other side. I'll be back. Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.